The Hulu battle between Disney and Comcast is something that is a bit complicated and requires a little bit of thought. But when you really dive into it, when you do a deep dive and you look into exactly what happened when, and you look at the full timeline, you get a scope of exactly why Disney has been so desperate and why their moves as of late are seeming more like desperation and failure in an attempt to counter this pressure against the Walt Disney Corporation. As always, I'm Andrew Esquire, a Florida attorney, a specialist in real estate and special district law for almost a decade, and then also working in-house in very large Fortune 500 companies. So today we want to get into it and really go through the entire saga of the Hulu experience, this fight between Comcast and Disney, because I've talked about it before and I've hit on different aspects like this new change that they're going to require them to pay for the operating costs of Hulu until they figure it out, which I think is huge and may break Disney, but also to give people background, like when did this start? How long did Disney know about this? When did this come up? Could they have planned for this? We'll be able to talk about that here today. Of course, this is The Legal Mindset, where we teach you to be your own judge. And I hope all of you have subscribed to this channel. I know there's about 50% of you, 50% that are not subscribed. So if you could subscribe today, that would be fine and dandy. I would really appreciate that. We're almost there at 100K. So of course, lately, I've been on kind of a kick of putting together these timelines. Maybe it's just me and wanting to understand it for myself. And when I create something to understand it for myself, I want to share it with you guys because, well, I'm just a simple Florida man and I'm just trying to understand these things in a simple way myself and communicate them out there to you guys. So what I do is I put together a very basic timeline for the Comcast versus Disney fight over Hulu. And this is kind of my reference cheat sheet here to think about this in terms of a timeline, bringing us towards today. So, back in 2019, so before the time of, well, actually this is during Iger's time, before he left and Chapek stepped in, they had an agreement. So Disney and Comcast, who is the other holder of 1/3 of Hulu, at this point Disney owned 2/3 because they bought out all the other shares. They bought out Fox. So they had 2/3 ownership of Hulu. Comcast had 1/3. And they said in 2019, they said, hey, we're going to have this agreement. And ultimately, we want Disney to take control of Hulu. And what we're going to do is we are going to give either Disney or Comcast the option to force either Disney to force Comcast to sell or Comcast to force Disney to buy Hulu in 2024, starting in early 2024. So they knew this as of 2019. So the thing to me that jumps out right away is this is not something unexpected, but now the corporation is acting as if, oh my gosh, all these costs are coming out of nowhere. We had no idea. We had no idea. I think perhaps they were banking on making way more profit in 2019. So they thought, oh yeah, no problem. We're going to have billions of dollars to buy them out. We're Disney, right? We're going to make bank. We're going to milk Marvel. We're going to make good animated films. We're going to kill it with Star Wars. We're going to do great. We're going to be Gucci in 2019. Well, of course, as we all know, a little something came around in 2019. It was the beer bug. And this is pre-beer bug, making these predictions over there in 2019. And of course, as you guys remember, a little something happened and things went downhill. Especially with the theaters and the movie theaters and what happened during the pandemic. So as part of the agreement, where they both agreed, hey, Disney's going to take control of Hulu, they said the minimum price, this is back in 2019, they said the minimum price is $27.5 billion. So Comcast's stake at a minimum is $9 billion under that agreement. So they have something solid there that Disney cannot breach. If they did breach that legally, they'd be on the line there because that'd be a breach of contract, for that previous agreement. So there would definitely be some damages there. So it seems so far that Disney has not indicated they're going to breach that original agreement. So just from a legal standpoint, I don't think Disney is in breach yet. Now, one thing they did agree on was that, hey, look, we're wanting to sell this in 2024. So they were giving numbers in 2019 numbers. So they need an independent assessment going forward. So they set it at a minimum of 27.5, but they want an independent assessment to see, okay, where's the valuation at now? Where's it at today? And Comcast is arguing it's at 70 billion. Now, we could all say that's probably very high, right? It's probably pretty high. So the stake for Comcast at 70 billion would be around $23 billion. So there's a big nexus there between 23 billion and 9 billion. In fact, that's quite significant amount of money. And you see that in 2023, in February, when Bob Iger is back, so he's now kicked Chapek out, he's back in control, he's the daddy again at Disney. And he set in February a goal of $5.5 billion in savings. So he announced, and this is quoting from him directly, that we are targeting $5.5 billion in cost savings across the company. Exact words of Iger in 2023. So he told us, hey, we're going to be cost cutting. He said this. And you know what's funny is I don't think people actually listen to these things. I think they let them pass by like, oh yeah, cost cutting. No big deal, right? You're going to just, add some ones, zeros, and it's all going to balance out. Nope. You've got to fire people at some point for that. Now, they were planning to cut from content areas. So you can cut, for example, content that you had perhaps intended to make. And then you're saying, okay, we're no longer going to make that content. So we're going to now save on that money that we had earmarked for production of certain content that we're just going to cut back on. We're just not going to make that content. So that's one way to do it. But they said, even then in February, that of that 5.5, they wanted at least, at minimum, 2.5 to come from non-content areas. So what does that mean? Look, nobody's feelings might get hurt if a concept gets canceled. Well, except for the people working on those concepts. We'll talk about that when we talk about Pixar in a second. But when they say non-content areas, that means layoffs. That means layoffs, firings, projects that were supposed to go forward that are no longer going forward, jobs lost. These are jobs that are lost, whether they're construction jobs, whether they're current employees. These are people they are not paying in the future, $2.5 billion worth. So when Disney cuts back, understand this is part of their goal. They need to find the money under the couch cushion in order to be able to even come close. And by the way, 5.5 billion doesn't come close to the 9 billion they need. But I think, and methinks this is my guess here, is that what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, okay, we get the 5.5 billion, we can leverage that money, right? We can leverage that money, maybe borrow the rest, borrow the difference, and get there with the Hulu purchase, because they're already very heavily leveraged. So they might be able to find some leverage for that remaining amount. Let's say they had to pay 9 billion. Okay, well, that's 4.5 billion. They raised more than half of that. All right, close enough. Now in 2023, in mid-May, so we went from February to May, the Comcast CEO says Disney must be ready to write a big check in 2024, which clearly indicates that he is going to exercise that option. So one thing I want to point out here with that is that when he says he's going to exercise that option, when he's going to, make them write a big check, at that time, Comcast is valuing Hulu at 70 billion. So they're actually coming at it with a quite high valuation. Now, a lot of people, I know my friends Valiant and Mexican Iron Man and some other folks have said, hey, 70 seems high. I'd probably agree with that. Look, I'm not a numbers guy. This is a legal mindset, not financial mindset. However, finances do play a big part in the legal aspects here. And as you see going forward from that, so mid-May, this is actually May 16th, right before, by the way, as those who have been following this channel for my Reedy Creek litigation updates, that's exactly the same day that this was announced, this big check comment, that Disney filed a big motion to dismiss and made a big kerfuffle about that in the federal case. So switch over to May and June of 2023. You have 2 days later, announcements of the Galactic Star Cruiser being cut and the Lake Nona project being cut. So what they're saying there is, okay, we're going to save a bunch of money by just mothballing the cruiser. We're going to cut Lake Nona, right? So we're going to, on paper, save $1 billion. right? Even though, by the way, like I said, 2/3 of that was going to be taxpayer funded by Floridians. But let's forget about that. They're going to earmark that on their budget as, oh, we just saved billion, right? And then you got the Galactic Star Cruiser. Not sure how much the operational costs were on that, but I'm sure it was a significant amount. But then right now we've had in the last couple days, you guys have seen where Pixar has had cuts. So the executives behind Lightyear were just cut. So that's even more cuts. And of course, those executives are paid much more than the peons. So that's going to save them some good money there. And we are also going into May and June in the third round of layoffs. Layoffs has been going on since really early in 2023, starting in February, March was the first round of layoffs. We're several rounds in right now, and I think these are going to continue for really most of the rest of the year, at least for at least the second and third quarter. I think Disney's going to continue to have layoffs within the company. So we're in a deep set of layoffs. We've already had 7,000 employees laid off at Disney, significant numbers that they're targeting within the corporation. So I think these are all cuts that go along with that $5.5 billion goal in February. I think, once again, when he said that, I think people wildly underestimated it. And so the latest update, the reason why I want to do this video is, as of date, we just got an update from the Arbiter that they are billions of dollars away, an official statement from the arbitration that they are billions of dollars away. They are still not in agreement. And this is huge. This is massive, because this means that, whatever the Arbiter ends up ruling on and deciding, Disney's going to have to pay. And listen, the odds are it's going to be higher than the minimum. I don't think it's going to be the minimum. I think when you go to an arbitration, typically, once again, it tends to come out somewhere in the middle, right? So even if it comes out, let's say at 30 instead of 27, okay, well, that's 10 billion. Significant amount of money for Disney, and certainly they're going to need to cut more and more and more. So look forward to Disney trying to frame things in a way that they're doing it for a political purpose or for X, Y, or Z, when really all they're doing is firing people like any other corporation, except for they do not have the cojones, as one might say, to own up and say they're doing it because they need to save money to buy Hulu. And that's what I think is so disingenuous about all of this, and what really is infuriating is that if they just said, look, we've got to do this, we're contractually obliged, sorry, I would have much more respect for Disney. But instead, they're cloaking this under the umbrella of, oh, we're doing this for political purposes. We're doing this because Ron DeSantis is evil, right? Or we're being persecuted or retaliated against. These are ridiculous, of course, arguments. And as always, I am going to debunk those here on The Legal Mindset. Guys, I hope you've liked this video. I hope you like these types of videos. Once again, like, comment, subscribe if you're not, and I will catch you all on the next one. Peace.